Hi, I'm Lisa.
Hello, I'm
Sorry.
Denise. Why, sorry.
Oh, no.
And welcome to the Outback Sisters.
Yes. Yes, I hope you're going to enjoy today as we are doing a nasty little piece of work who obviously doesn't
Yes,
really deserve to ever existed. I had to be that way, but
Amelia Elizabeth Hobley.
yes.
Just an amazing woman. And I
Yes.
say that tongue in cheek.
Yes. In the most vicious sarcasm I can think possible. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amelia, as we'll call her, or Hobley, whatever you'd like to call her. That obviously, she was obviously born, not obviously, she was born in 1837,
She
and
was obviously born, but not
she was born,
necessarily in that
and
year.
though we wish she wasn't. And then she died in June 19, in 1896.
You do that regularly. So, guys, if you hear a 19 or a 17,
Minus
it's
100 years.
probably an
Plus.
18 it's supposed to be.
She was dubbed the Ogress of Reading, and I think that's right, Reading.
I
Um,
think so.
yeah, she was an English
Or
serial
reading.
killer. Yeah, we're not sure, but we do think it was Reading. She was an English serial killer who murdered infants in her care over a 30-year period during the Victorian era. Trained.
Amelia was
Go ahead.
Amelia was the youngest of five children born into a working class family.
Yeah, we done some additions to this, and I probably forgot where it was all supposed to go, so I'm going to be going like this all the way through
I
it.
sent you a copy.
I know, but I kept my old copy. Sorry, doesn't
Okay, so this
matter.
could be interesting.
Am I allowed to say that she was trained as a nurse here?
Yeah,
Okay.
just do it. Just keep
Trained
reading.
as a nurse and widowed in 1869.
No,
1969. She turned to baby farming. I mean, we got animal farming here, dog farming. And it was baby farming.
we
The
probably did
practice,
have baby farming. We
probably.
probably still do. Who knows?
Yeah, especially in poor countries. The practice of
Mm.
adopting unwanted infants in exchange for money to support herself. She initially cared for the children legitimately, in addition to having two of her own. But whether unintentional or not, a number of them died in her care, leading to a conviction for neglect, or sorry, conviction for neglect. I've just lost, and six
And,
months
and
hard
she
labor.
served 6 months
Yeah,
hard
I
labor.
just lost what I was doing. My grey hair is slipping in. She had began directly murdering children that she had adopted, strangling at least some of them and disposing of their bodies to avoid attention. Mentally unstable? Now, is that just not obvious? She was committed to several mental asylums throughout her life, despite suspicions of pretending, and survived at least
Pretending.
one, yeah, and survived at least one serious suicide attempt. They should have left her.
It's really fortunate that her reign of horror ended when the bad corpse of an infant, was discovered in the River Thames. She was arrested on the 4th of April 1896, and in one of the most sensational trials of the Victorian period, she was found guilty of at least one murder and was hanged on the 10th of June 1896.
And we all
But
cheer.
unfortunately, at the time of her death, she was attributed to the death of only a handful of murderers. Murders. But there is little doubt she was responsible for many more deaths. While experts say that she may be responsible for up to 400, there is a great possibility that she murdered many more babies, making her a candidate for history's most prolific. Oh my God, it's contagious. Murderer, serial killer. Dyer's case led to stricter laws for the adoption and child protection, and helped raise the profile of the fledgling National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, which formed in 1884. So here is her whole story.
Okay, I think in the small village of Pylemarsh, just east of Bristol, the daughter of master shoemaker Samuel Hobley and Sarah Hobley, nee Weymouth, Amelia learned to read and write and developed a love of literature and poetry. However, her childhood was marred by the mental illness of her mother caused by typhus. Amelia witnessed her mother's violent fits and was obliged to care for her until she died in 1848. How was she? I'm just having a quick mathematics, Denise.
Mm.
Right, so she was born in 1837. Her mother had gone crazy and died in 1848. She was 11
11.
dealing with that. Researchers later commented on the effect this would have had on Dyer.
But 1 second. She was the youngest of the
Yeah,
family, having older siblings. So while I agree, it was horrendous, and no 11-year-old should have to live
no,
through that. She
um,
did have older siblings, and I mean, I don't know how much older they were, but she had older siblings.
one of
So
her older siblings died at the age of 6. She was already dead.
yeah, but she had 3 brothers,
I don't
Thomas,
know about
James,
the
and
brother.
William, and the sister who was Anne,
Yeah,
still alive. Her sister Sarah Ann died in
yeah.
1841,
Well,
at age
like in
6, and
most,
the youngest sister named Sarah Ann died in 1845,
yeah,
but she was only a few months old.
yeah. I think
Um,
the fact is, in them days, the male children, they may have been working. They probably would have had very little
True,
to do with the family
true.
day-to-day running. It was normally left, if you think of history, to in that
She had
period.
an older
Yeah,
sister Anne.
but
But the
that
one thing I'm trying to say here is, yeah, it's horrific. Yeah, but she had 4 siblings who didn't decide to kill people.
no, that's
So
something else that's crept into her.
yeah,
That's something
so
else that's happened.
so
Yeah,
I mean, did mum's mental illness? Sure, it may have been caused by typhus, but at the end of the day, was that mental illness something that carried down through the line? And I
yeah.
do not blame mental illness for. I do not condone what she did
God
and
no,
say mental illness is an excuse. It's not.
no.
But is what the reality of this is. Sure, mum had a mental illness exacerbated by typhus,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Amelia was born or had some kind of predetermination. No, that's not the right word, but you know what I mean.
yeah.
To mental illness herself, in which
Predisposition,
case, predisposition,
predisposition,
yeah,
because a lot of
that'll work.
this would have
Shove
asked.
your word here.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
I'll put it in there. It's this way, so a
but
lot of
I,
mental illnesses are hereditary. Not all,
yes, that's right.
but if you're already
So
subject to
maybe we're
something,
looking at a combination of things here.
okay.
Um,
It's a from what
because
we'll hear, the childhood was pretty well not the it started off well. An educated woman in them days is even a good thing, but
mm,
obviously the wheels fall off in her head
mm,
somewhere along the line. And I was not able to find anything more on her family, what had happened to them. That's something I will look into later, and we might be able
yeah,
to put that
yeah.
into our blog
That's
site.
maybe I can um what's the word I'm looking for?
Post.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe her brothers and sisters did turn out to be horrific people just like her because of the circumstances of their childhood. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. So
Um,
anyhow, Dyer were you finished?
Yeah, it just says the researchers later commented on the effect this would have had on her, and that it taught her about the symptoms exhibited by those who appear to lose their mind through illness.
So that gives you a double thing. She using that to pretend to be
I mean, you don't know what
having
she
mental
may have as she
illness?
got older when she was being charged with. She may have thought, hey, I can pretend. I mean,
Yeah.
not all mentally unstable people are not smart. Or quite often
In fact, quite the opposite,
they're
really.
strong.
Mental illness and intelligence are not,
No, no,
they're separate things.
that's it.
So, yeah. So Dyer had an elder sister who was Sarah Ann, and she died at age, which we've just discussed.
Yeah.
And she also had a younger sister called Sarah Ann who died in 1845, who was just only a few months old. An elder cousin had an illegitimate daughter at the time who was later accepted as the grandparents' daughter, the grandparents being William and Martha Hobley, who was Dyer's aunt and uncle.
After her mother's death, Amelia lived with her aunt in Bristol for a time before serving as an apprenticeship with a corset maker. Her father died in 1859. Her eldest brother Thomas inherited the family shoe business in 1861 at the age of 24. Martha became permanently estranged from at least one of her brothers, James, and moved into the lodgings in Trinity Street, Bristol. There she married George Thomas. George was 59. Oh my gosh, this big age difference.
Mm.
And they lied about their ages on the marriage certificate to reduce the age gap. George deducted 11 years from his age and Amelia added 6 years to hers. Many sources later reported this age as fact, causing much confusion. So you got a lot, yeah, who said she's...
Yeah, there's a little bit of innuendo and perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after marrying George Thomas, Dyer trained as a nurse. And can we just pause this for a minute?
Hang on,
What's up?
I don't know how.
Press the record, but there's a pause button.
Okay.
After marrying George, Dyer trained as a nurse. From contact with a midwife, Ellen Dane, she learned of an easier way of earning a living, using her own home to provide lodgings for young women who have conceived illegitimately and then farming off the babies for adoption, or allowing them to die of neglect or malnutrition. Dane decamped to the United States shortly after meeting Emilia to escape the attention of the authorities. So maybe we should look into Dane. Unmarried mothers during the Victorian period often struggled to gain an income since the 1834 Poor Law Amendment Act had removed any financial obligation from the fathers of illegitimate children, whilst bringing up their children in a society where single parenthood and illegitimacy were stigmatized. This led to the practice of baby farming, in which individuals acted as adoption or fostering agents in return for regular payments or a single upfront fee from the baby's mothers. Many businesses were set up to take in these young women and care for them until they gave birth. The mothers subsequently left their unwanted babies to be looked after as nurse children.
The predicament of parents involved were often exploited for financial gain. If a baby had well-off parents who wanted to keep their birth secret, the single fee might be as much as £80. £50 might be negotiated if the father of the child wanted to hush up his involvement. However, if it was more common for these expectant young women to be impoverished, such women would be charged about £5. It's not life cheap. Still is.
Unscrupulous carers resorted to starving the farmed out babies to save money and even to hasten death. Noisy or demanding babies could be sedated with easily available alcohol and or opiates. Godfrey's cordial, known colloquially as mother's friend, a syrup containing opium, was a frequent choice, but there were several other similar preparations. Many children died as a result of such dubious practices. Opium killed far more infants than starvation than directly through overdose. Dr. Greenhow, investigating for the Privy Council, noted how children kept in state of continued narcotism, drugged in other words,
Yeah.
will be thereby disinclined for food and be but imperfectly nourished. Death from severe malnutrition would result, but the coroner was likely to record the death as debility from birth or lack of breast milk or simply starvation. Mothers who chose to reclaim or simply check on the welfare of the children would often encounter difficulties, but some would simply be too frightened or ashamed to tell the police about any suspected wrongdoing. Even the authorities often have problems tracing any children that were reported missing.
This was the world opened up to her, to Dyer obviously, by the now departed Ellen Dane. Dyer had to leave nursing with the birth of a daughter, Ellen Thomas, in 1869. The elderly George Thomas died, and Emilia needed an income. Dyer was keen to make money from baby farming, and alongside taking in expectant mothers, she advertised to nurse and adopt a baby in return for a substantial one-off payment and adequate clothing for the child. In her advertisements and meetings with clients, she assured them that she was respectable and married, and that she would provide a safe and loving home for the child.
So in 1872, she married William Dyer, a brewer's labourer from Bristol. They had two children together, Mary Ann, also known as Polly. Where does that come from? And William Samuel. Emilia eventually left her husband. At some point in her baby farming career, Dyer decided to forego the expense and inconvenience of letting the children die through neglect and starvation. Soon after the receipt of each child, she murdered them, thus allowing her to pocket most, if not all, of the fee.
For some time, Dyer eluded the resulting interest of the police. She was eventually caught in 1879 after a doctor was suspicious about the number of child deaths they'd been called to certify in Dyer's care. However, instead of being convinced of murder or manslaughter,
Convicted.
Convicted. Sorry, I skipped that word. She was sentenced to 6 months hard labour. The experience allegedly almost destroyed her mentally, though others have expressed incredulity. Gee, I'm going to have to do some of these words. At the leniency of the sentence when compared to those handed out for lesser crimes at the time.
It's disbelief.
Yeah, I guess so, but it just doesn't sound right in the mouth, you know what I mean?
So others have expressed disbelief at the leniency of the sentence. Upon release, she attempted to resume her nursing career. She had spells in mental hospitals due to mental instability and suicidal tendencies. These always coincided with times when it was convenient for her to disappear.
Yeah.
Being a former asylum nurse, Dyer knew how to behave to ensure a relatively comfortable existence as an asylum inmate. Dyer appears to have begun abusing alcohol and opium-based products early in her killing career. Her mental instability could have been related to that substance abuse. In 1890, she cared for the illegitimate baby of a governess. When the governess returned to visit the child, she was immediately suspicious and stripped the baby to see if a birthmark was present on one of its hips. It wasn't. And prolonged suspicion by the authorities led to Dyer having or feigned a breakdown. Dyer at one point drank 2 bottles of laudanum in a serious suicide attempt, but her long-term use had built up a tolerance to opium products, and she thus survived.
She returned to baby farming and murder.
As you do.
Dyer realised the folly of involving doctors to issue death certificates and began disposing of bodies herself. She was getting smarter.
Of course she was, yeah. And that's why they'll never know how many babies.
Exactly.
They'll never know.
No. The precarious nature and extent of her activities again prompted undesirable attention. She was alert to the attention of police and of parents seeking to reclaim children. She and her family frequently relocated to different towns and cities to escape suspicion, regain anonymity, and and to acquire new business. Over the years, Dyer used a succession of aliases.
In 1893, she was discharged from her final committal at the Somerset and Bath Lunatic Asylum near Wells. Unlike previous breakdowns, this had been a most disagreeable experience, and she never entered another asylum. 2 years later, she moved to Caversham, Berkshire, accompanied by an unsuspecting associate, Jane Gretty Smith, who Dyer had recruited from a brief spell in a workhouse, and Dyer's daughter and son-in-law, Mary Ann, known as Polly, and Arthur Palmer. This was followed by a move to 45 Kensington Road, Reading. Later that same year, Smith was persuaded by Dyer to be referred to as mother in front of innocent women handing over their children. This was an effort to present a caring mother-daughter image.
Okay.
This was an effort.
All right.
So they tried to make it look like all was good. They're all happy.
Nice family.
And
just love
yeah, big, close, happy family.
Yeah.
As most murdering people are. Yeah.
All right. The murder of Doris Marmon. So we've got obviously a one-off case here. In January 1896, Evelina Marmon, popular 25-year-old barmaid, gave birth to an illegitimate daughter, Doris, in a boarding school in Cheltenham. She quickly sought offers of adoption and placed an advertisement in the miscellaneous section of the Bristol Times and Mirror newspaper. It simply read, "Wanted, respectful woman to take a young child." Marmon intended to go back to work and hoped to eventually reclaim her child.
Coincidentally, next to her own was an advertisement reading, "Married couple with no family would adopt a healthy child. Nice country home, terms £10." Marmon responded to Mrs. Harding, and a few days later she received a reply from Dyer from Oxford Road in Reading. Mrs. Harding wrote that, "I should be glad to have a dear baby girl, one I could bring up and call my own." She continued, "We're plain, homely people in fairly good circumstances. I don't want a child for money's sake, but the company and home comfort. I and my husband are dearly fond of children, and I have no children of my own. A child with me will have a good home and a mother's love."
Evelina Marmon wanted to pay a more affordable weekly fee for the care of her daughter, but Mrs. Harding insisted on being given the one-off payment in advance. Marmon was in dire straits, so she reluctantly agreed to pay £10 a week later. Mrs. Harding arrived. Mrs. Harding, not her real name, obviously, arrived in Cheltenham. Marmon was surprised by Dyer's advanced age and stocky appearance, but as Dyer was affectionate towards Doris, Evelina handed the daughter over a cardboard box of clothing and £10. Still distressed at having to give up care of her daughter, Evelina accompanied Dyer to Cheltenham Station and then on to Gloucester. She returned to her lodgings, a broken woman. A few days later, she received a letter from Mrs. Harding saying all was well. Marmon wrote back, but received no reply.
Dyer did not travel to Reading, as she had told Marmon. She went instead to 76 Mayo Road, Walston, London, where her 23-year-old daughter Polly was staying. There, Dyer quickly found some white edging tape used in dressmaking, wound it twice around the baby's neck and tied a knot. Death would not have been immediate. Dyer later said, "I used to like to watch them with the tape around their neck, but it was soon all over with them."
I can't believe that you could. That's so awful.
I don't care how many times she's seen her mother suffer. You don't.
How did you do that?
You don't do that. Yeah.
It's horrific.
That's barbaric.
Both women allegedly helped to wrap the body in a napkin. They take some of the clothes Marmon had packed, and the rest was destined for the pawnbroker. Dyer paid the rent on the unwitting landlady and gave her a pair of child's boots as a present for her little girl. The following day, Wednesday, 1st of April 1896, another child named Harry Simmons was taken to Mayo Road. However, with no spare white etching tape available, the length around Doris's corpse was removed and used to strangle the 13-month-old boy.
On the 2nd of April, both bodies were stacked into a carpet bag, along with bricks ready weight. Dyer then headed for reading at a secluded spot she knew well near Alwea at Caversham Lock. She forced the carpet bag through railings into the River Thames.
Unbeknownst to Dyer, on the 30th of March 1896, a package was retrieved from the Thames at Reading by a bargeman. The package Dyer dumped was not weighted down adequately and had been easily spotted. It contained the body of a baby girl, later identified as Helena Fry, in the small detectable force available to Reading. I think I've got something missing anyway. Detective Constable Anderson made a crucial breakthrough. As well as finding a label from the Temple Mead Station, Bristol, he used microscopic analysis of the wrapped paper and deciphered a faint, legible name, Mrs. Thomas, and an address.
This evidence was enough to lead police to Dyer, but they still had no strong evidence to connect her directly to any serious crime. Additionally, the evidence they gleaned from witnesses and information obtained from Bristol police only served to increase their concerns. And DC Anderson, with Sergeant James, placed Dyer's home under surveillance. Subsequent intelligence suggested that Dyer would abscond if she came at all under suspicion. The officers decided to use a young woman as a decoy, hoping she would be able to secure a meeting with Dyer to discuss her circumstances. Discuss her services. This may have been designed to help the detectives to positively link Dyer to her business activities, or it may have simply given them a reliable opportunity to arrest her.
It transpired that Dyer was expecting her new client, the decoy, to call, but instead she found detectives waiting at her doorstep. On 3rd of April, Good Friday, the police raided her home. They were struck by the stench of human decomposition, although no human remains were found. There was, however, plenty of other related evidence, including white edging tape, telegrams regarding adoption arrangements, pawn tickets for children's clothes, receipts for advertisements and letters from mothers inquiring about well-being of their children. The police calculated that the previous few months alone, at least 20 children have been placed in the care of Mrs. Thomas, now revealed to be Emilia Dyer. It also appeared that she was about to move home again, this time to Somerset. The rate of murders had led to some estimates that Dyer may have, over the decades, killed over 400 babies and children, making her, as we had said earlier, the most prolific murderer ever.
So she was arrested on the 4th of April and charged with murder. Her son-in-law, Arthur Palmer, was charged as an accessory. During April, the Thames was dredged and 6 more bodies were discovered, including Doris Marmon and Harry Simons, Dyer's latest victims. Each baby had been strangled with white tape, which, as she later told the police, was how you could tell it was one of mine. Sick.
Yeah.
11 days after handing her daughter Dyer, Evelyn Marmon, whose name had emerged in items kept by Dyer, identified her daughter's remains.
God, how bad. How awful. At the inquest into the deaths in early May, no evidence was found that Mary Ann or Arthur Palmer had acted as Dyer's accomplices. Arthur Palmer was discharged as a result of confession written by Emilia Dyer. In Reading Jail, she wrote with her spelling and punctuation preserved.
Sir, will you kindly grant me the favour of presenting this to the magistrates on Saturday the 18th instant? I have made this statement out, for I may not have the opportunity, then I must relieve my mind. I do know, and I feel my days are numbered on this earth, but I do feel it is an awful thing drawing innocent people into trouble. I do know I should have to answer before my Maker in heaven for the awful crimes I have committed. But as God Almighty is my judge in heaven and on earth, neither my daughter Mary Ann Palmer nor her husband Alfred Ernest Palmer, I do solemnly declare, neither of them had anything to do with it. They never knew I contemplated doing such a wicked thing until it was too late. I am speaking the truth and nothing but the truth, as I hope to be forgiven. I and I alone must stand before my Maker in heaven to answer it all. Witness my hand, Emilia Dyer.
Yeah, she thinks she's going to freaking heaven. How dare
16th of April, 1896. Well, if you're a person who believes in forgiveness, she has declared her
yeah,
sins and therefore she is forgiven.
and especially Catholics, they're especially into that.
Well, I mean, it's what is I don't know if there is, I don't know if there is a God, but I think honestly, if there is a God, to take a person, and I use that term loosely, who has done the crimes that she has done, and then sat there and said, "I'm sorry, I did them." No,
I'm going
no.
to pause, Denise.